and socialize and be part of it and sweat and feel like you get a workout. But just like you described, if there's one of those days where you're not feeling fantastic, you can go in and do all kinds of productive things in the gym that are not super stressful or strenuous.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have someone that I've been learning from over the years as well. I've heard him on many podcasts. I've even purchased a supplement that he made, which I think many people would find a very interesting out-of-the-box type of supplement. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. But Brad Kearns is a New York Times best-selling author, Guinness World Record-setting professional speed golfer, #1 ranked USA age 55 to 59 high jumper, former U.S. national champion and #3 world-ranked professional triathlete. He hosts the B.rad podcast covering healthy living, peak performance, and personal growth. With his carefree style and lively sense of humor, he's written over 20 books on diet, health, peak performance, and ancestral living. He's a popular speaker, retreat host, and host of numerous online multimedia educational courses at bradkearns.com. In 2017, the Keto Reset Diet that he co-authored with Mark Sisson, who's really a legend in the industry. If many of you guys haven't heard of Mark Sisson yet, he's someone I've also followed for many years and inspired me to go on my health journey. And he became a New York Times bestselling and #1 ranked overall with that best-selling book with Mark on Amazon.com. So welcome, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, Talor, I appreciate the invite. And when we talk about peak performance, what else could be more important in life? I mean, you read my bio, and a long, long time ago, I was this professional triathlete. So I dedicated my life for 9 years with, complete devotion to this extreme training regimen and traveling all over the globe and living out this dream that I had since I was a little kid. I wanted to be a professional athlete. I thought I was going to be in the NFL. But when I got to high school and was, I think I weighed in at 5'5" at 115 pounds as a sophomore, there wasn't going to be any football or basketball happening. So I had a great journey in the endurance sports and in the world of athletics. But this was so long ago now, and now I'm 57 years old, as you heard with my high jumping division. And you realize over time that we all have our day in the sun, and we can tell stories the rest of our lives. How, boy, our baseball team was undefeated when I was 14, and it was so awesome. And a lot of that is happening while we're sitting in front of the television watching other peak performers play out their peak years. And as you go through the decades, you realize how incredibly important it is to maintain some sort of competitive edge, some sort of juice that gets you up in the morning pursuing a goal. And it doesn't have to be something earth-shattering like a lot of the triathletes that I raced with decades ago are still going, a few I should say. And it's so impressive to me and amazing, because I would never want to do a triathlon today. It's too hard. It takes too long. The training's too difficult. But I've transitioned over time to an assortment of different goals, but I always had something that was driving peak performance and keeping me focused and keeping me with that purpose that balances out all the other core daily responsibilities of my career, raising kids and whatnot. So even if you're not an ex-athlete from back in the day, it's never too late to start. And you rev up that engine right now and say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to get a specific goal in mind and start working toward it with baby steps every single day. So that's kind of what my B.rad podcast theme is all about, as well as this pursuit of peak performance with passion throughout life.
It's amazing. I love it. And can't wait to get into some of your morning routines and your mindsets on exercise. For a lot of people, I think it will be really, really refreshing. For me, I think, at 57, man, that's the most important time, like, to be healthy, right? There's like this saying that, like, when you're young, you have your time and your health, but you don't have money. And then in the middle, right? And then when you're old, you have the money, but you don't have your health, or something like that, right? And so to have it all, especially in those years, to me, it's the most impressive when I see someone who's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who's in shape, who's fit, who's still exercising. When you're in your 20s, you can do whatever and get away with whatever and all that. But this is super inspiring for myself. I'm sure for many of our listeners. Most of our listeners are actually over the age of 35. So I think many of them will be inspired. And yeah, would love to just jump right in. So I know you have some thoughts and ideas and even a training program around a morning routine, right?
Yes, it's an interesting topic for me to discuss because, as we've just told the listeners, I'm a lifelong athlete. I have this background of racing at the highest level of elite performance and still compete and have all these accolades. And so fitness is not one of my needs to improve areas. I don't have to wake up every day and be frustrated and, dang, when am I going to get in shape? So I have that thing sort of handled. However, about 5.5 years ago, I had this kind of turning point in my life where I decided that my workouts were too strenuous and they were beating me up too bad. My difficult workouts, my sprint workouts, my jumping workouts. And it was because I didn't really approximate the challenge of my most difficult workouts, except for that once a week when I went out there and kicked some butt. And then I'd be limping around the house with sore calves for 3 days and feeling tired the next day. And so I realized that I have to kind of Pavel Sitsolin, the famous kettlebell trainer, calls it grease the groove. I have to do something every day that gets my body a little bit prepared for what I ask it to do during a true peak performance session. So I designed this morning exercise routine. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try this every single morning for a few minutes. And it involves some custom designed leg exercises, leg strengthening, mobility, flexibility, some yoga moves in there, some core strengthening. So it was this little session that it started out taking about 12 minutes, and it wasn't that strenuous, but it did start to make a difference. And my hamstrings were starting to feel better when I went out there and performed on the track. And so I kind of stuck to it. And over time, I will contend that this little idea has truly been life-changing for me, even as a lifelong fitness enthusiast. And that's because this crazy life that we live in now, that's completely hyper-connected and has constant potential for distraction and digital stimulation. It's quite different than the first half of my life when none of this existed. So those of us listening who can remember what it was like to wake up without a mobile device in hand that had an internet connection and complete engagement with whatever we want as soon as we open up our eyes, boy, it's something to battle against, because it can send you down that rabbit hole of dopamine addiction and all the terrible things that we hear about when it comes to over engagement and lack of discipline with news, distressing news, social media, comparison culture, all those things. So my resolve was to get out of bed and immediately hit the deck and go through this sequence of exercises. And I designed it in this sweet spot degree of difficulty and duration such that it really wasn't a big deal and it wasn't a huge ask for me to do every single day. In contrast, there's a lot of this behavior where we say, okay, that's enough. It's time for me to get in shape, and I'm going to go to the gym every day for an hour and bust my butt, and that's going to work. And oh, the gym is a 12-minute drive away. Sometimes the parking lot's full. It's like it's a major ordeal that's not going to be very sustainable to do every single day. So I wanted to find this sweet spot. That's why I mentioned 12 minutes at the outset, that I'm not that busy and not that important that I can't devote 12 minutes of my time to physical fitness. And I think it's also important to mention that this is as soon as I wake up, in lieu of reaching for the device. And a recent survey by Adweek revealed that 84% of Americans do just that as soon as they wake up. And half of that number, so almost all of us reach for the device, half of that number are still in bed. And so that means the device is plugged in near enough your head where you're getting EMF, probably Wi-Fi signaling all night. And then there's a lot of psychology experts contending that as soon as you engage with this hyper stimulation and these cultivated experiences that the social media designers and the news designers do to draw you in, it's very difficult for your brain to extricate from that reactive mode and get into the most desirable morning state. Morning's the time for peak performance. I'm sure you've had shows about it and all that, where we want to be in that high-level strategic thinking, reasoning, planning, looking at a to-do list, perhaps writing in a gratitude journal, whatever it is that's going to set you up for a proactive day rather than a a reactive day. So if I exert that tiny bit of discipline to just leave my phone be on the shelf far away from my bed and then go do my exercises, and then guess what? Hey, I might reach for that phone and it might even be seen as a reward because I knocked it out again. So I'm kind of rambling here, but I want to present this whole story because it started at 12 minutes. And what happened was, over time, it started to feel so good. My body conditioning was helping my workouts. It was helping me build more focus and discipline as I went through the other steps of my day. And so what I would do over time was like, I'd audition a new workout that I thought would be interesting or be helpful, and I'd try it out and I'd add it to the end. And then I'd say, you know what, that is a really good thing for me to do right now, and it's going to stick. And so I'm going to add it to the template. So another key element of this is that I do the exact same thing every single day. So I hit the deck, I do 40 leg raises, hamstring kickouts, then I do 20 frogs in each direction, then I do 20 scissors, then I do 20 bicycles in one direction, 20 in the other. Of course, so I'm counting everything, but it never changes. However, once in a while, the template will revise. So I'll add a workout, and now I'm going to finish with 25 dumbbell raises. And that's what I do every single day from that day forward. So today, 5.5 years later, this thing has turned into a pretty impressive whopper. It takes exactly 40 minutes. And so it is a big chunk out of my day. The degree of difficulty is pretty impressive. If you watch the video on my website, you're like, okay, that's pretty tough. I've taken some pretty fit friends and had them try it and they quit halfway. But interestingly, for me, it's not that difficult because I do it every single day. And so I've kind of elevated my fitness base for my entire life because of this dedication that has become such a habit that now it does not require any motivation, discipline, willpower. It doesn't require a certain attitude. I've reflected on this a lot myself, where it's like, I don't even judge this thing to be hard or easy. I just do it. It's sort of in the same category of brushing your teeth or getting up and fill in the blank, filling the coffee pot or what have you, things that are just automatic behaviors. And so maybe I'll take a breather there and let that sink in.
That's that. Yeah, I love that. That's it. Number one, the first advice about, maybe giving the phone as a reward, but just not keeping that phone away from you. I keep my phone actually downstairs, very far away, on airplane mode. And I keep it on airplane mode when I first come downstairs as well. For usually at least the first hour of the day, I'll keep it on airplane mode. And that just allows my mind, again, I'm very protective of what I let in my mind. I don't want to be bombarded with news or messages or other people's influence. I'm certainly not going on social media. People who do that, in my mind, is just, wow, I think you really need to get control of your life if you're waking up early and just checking social media right away, if I'm being honest. So I think it's great advice. And every time that I move or stretch or do anything in the morning, I just feel there's definitely a correlation with your mind, your energy levels, how you feel. And I think, again, for people listening, you can start off with 12 minutes and start, gradually adding to that. 12 minutes anyone can do. And even that would be a huge boost for most people. Are you also doing additional weight training workouts frequently in addition to that 40-minute workout in the morning?
Yeah. So here's what happens when I finish my set. I'm in this ideal, energized, focused state. So I will oftentimes head straight to the running track if that's the day for my workout, or perhaps head to the gym. But I don't need to do a whole ton more of formal workouts, and my workouts don't take that long because I'm calibrating everything toward longevity, and my peak performance interests are in the brief explosive competitions like high jumping and sprinting. In contrast to my endurance life, my past life, which I contend, just like you contend, someone hitting social media needs to get their life in order. The endurance endeavors are by and large inherently unhealthy for many people because the training is too strenuous. So that stuff I did as a younger person, I don't think was aligned with my health in any way, but it got me to be a super fit racer who could go really fast for a swim course and then get off and pedal my bike and then get off and run really fast. But the training was too grueling and too arduous. So now when I do go to the gym, I'm in and out of there in a short duration, and I'm working really hard doing some explosive efforts. I like the Doug McGuff Big Five workout where you hit these full body resistance exercises, one set to complete failure, and you only have to do it like once a week, and you will get strength gains without this huge devotion of time and the exhausting nature of many programmed workouts and fitness programming in mainstream, which is something that is really disturbing to me, because I think we've been sold this idea, this ethos that struggling and suffering is the way to get fit and the way to get your six pack. And it's completely, it's off base for the vast majority of fitness enthusiasts who just want to get in shape, look good, and feel good. And that simply doesn't take that much time when we're talking about the brief explosive workouts like resistance exercise or sprinting. And then the other component of being a person of total and complete fitness is to have that quotient of regular everyday movement. And that's where we want to get as much time on our feet as possible. So we want to get into a lifestyle where walking is routine. And if that's supplemented by formal cardio sessions, those sessions should be comfortably paced rather than exhausting. And those simple changes, and this is the stuff we've been talking about in the Primal Blueprint Marxism for many, many years, that, you know, our ancestral experience of health was a lot of general everyday movement at a comfortable pace, frequent bouts of lifting heavy stuff that didn't last that long, and then once in a while sprinting for your life. And that is a package that will give you a really nice, well-balanced fitness experience for longevity and peak performance.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad we brought this up. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about this, because I have a lot of friends also, and it's typical, it's pretty common, right? So I'm 41, and I would say a lot of my friends that are in their 40s and 50s who kind of learned about health maybe in the 80s, when it was like, yeah, run for 2 hours a day, and then you'll be in shape or something like that, right? And so I know, yeah, with the Primal podcast, you guys have talked, I think, a lot about, you know, chronic cardio or overtraining, and also for the effects of longevity, right? Let's talk a little bit about that. So for people who, I know I have some people in mind that I'm thinking of right now that, like, you know, they're wondering why they're not maybe getting the results they want, but all they're doing is really long cardio, because they're like, oh yeah, the cardio is the best thing for you, you know, and that's all they're doing really.
Oh my gosh. If you go into a typical fitness facility, you know, there's huge ones in Los Angeles. My son's a member, and I go in there and it's like bigger than Costco. I'm like, wow, this place is amazing. But half of the floor space seems to be dedicated to cardio machines. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why don't you guys go outside for one? I mean, there's beautiful parks adjacent to these banks and banks of machines. But the thing I'll say about that is that, of course, cardiovascular fitness is super important. You hear the experts talk about this zone 2 training concept as a way to promote longevity and heart health. And that just implies that you're performing at a comfortable pace rather than going hard, and you're doing a sustained effort. However, it's actually...
just to clarify, zone 2 for people who may not know, it would be considered like very fast-paced walking would be zone 2, kind of, or a slow jog, essentially.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of shape you're in, Talor, right? It might be for Eliud Kipchoge, the greatest marathon runner on the planet, it would be running 6-minute miles, you know, for 23 miles straight. That would be a conversational, you could call it conversational pace is a good one, where whatever that pace is, you can carry on a conversation. You're not going to get winded when talking. So for a lot of people, they get fooled thinking that because they can jog for 10 miles, they think they're performing at an aerobic heart rate, but really they've exceeded that aerobic maximum heart rate and are into the higher stress training zones. And that's the part that's unsustainable and often promotes breakdown, burnout, illness, and injury, because you're out there jogging innocently, but it's a little bit too hard and it's metabolically more stressful than what might be ideal, which would be that jog run/walk to keep that heart rate in the correct zone. And in terms of heart rate, you can make a simple calculation of 180 minus your age in beats per minute. So if you're 41, then your key number to look at on a heart rate monitor is 139, and you do not want to exceed that level when you're going out for your traditional cardiovascular workout, whether that's on the stairs at the gym or you're out jogging, hiking, walking. And surprisingly, it's a pretty comfortable pace to the point where it's really frustrating to adhere to this training methodology because you constantly have to slow yourself down, even though you think, I feel fine. Why do I have to go this slow? It feels like I'm not getting a workout, but that's the best way to train the aerobic system, the fat burning system. It gets conditioned at the lower heart rates. And as you drift above that hard limit of the aerobic maximum, 180 minus your age, you start to dip into what's more glucose metabolism, sugar burning workout. And that can create more fatigue. You kind of feel a little bit drained and depleted after. You might have a craving for Jamba Juice as soon as you finish your workout. And those are signs that you've worked your body in a more stressful manner than that basic cardiovascular aerobic conditioning. And when you can discipline yourself to slow down, you will find that over time, you build your fitness steadily. You build your conditioning without interruption from falling apart and getting too tired. And so you can start to go faster and faster at that same heart rate. And that's essentially the sign of becoming a better endurance athlete. So I mentioned the Olympic champ in the marathon is so well conditioned that at that same heart rate calculation, 180 minus age, he's flying through the forest or running past you on the sidewalk, and you're like, wow, look how fast that guy's going. But relatively speaking, his effort level is the same as our jogging and walking.
Yeah, that's a great formula. That's a great thing for people to be aware of, to not burn out and overwork themselves, but continue to get a good increase in their cardiovascular. So yeah, that's great. Really good stuff.
Now, here's the thing. To get an A+ in cardiovascular conditioning on your report card, it does not take a ton of time. So you don't have to be out there for hours and hours every week. In fact, there's research, there's a great TED Talk from Dr. James O'Keefe, and it's titled Run for Your Life, but Not Too Far and at a Slow Pace. And he's talking about the dangers and risks of overtraining, which are so common in the endurance community, and also the research validating that if you just exercise for a couple hours a week, at this comfortable heart rate, total I'm talking about. So if you do a brisk walk around the block for 20 minutes a few nights a week, or perhaps you do get to the gym a couple times a week and you climb the stairs for 40 minutes each time, and you add into that a hike on the weekend, if you can just get that basic level of physical movement, aerobic conditioning, you're going to maximize your aerobic health benefits and disease prevention benefits. Now, if you want to set a goal and perform in the Las Vegas Marathon next February, guess what? You're going to have to bust your butt and you're going to have to put in huge miles because the goal is so daunting that you've chosen. I would actually try to talk you out of that and say, hey, why don't you prepare for the 10K instead? Because 10K is a hell of a long way to go. And for some reason, we've romanticized this distance of the marathon, which is so extreme that it's inherently in conflict with your overall basic health and getting through hectic, high stress modern life without worrying about running 26 miles. Nevertheless, whatever, if you have those goals, that's when you want to escalate your training to prepare for the event. But if you're going for health, longevity, feeling great, managing your body weight, all these big goals that are very popular, a few hours a week is all you need. Then with that A+ in your one class, we're going to pull out your report card and look how you're doing in the other areas. And unfortunately, there's huge deficiencies in that brief, explosive, and resistance training, those categories, for some reason, because people are either intimidated or they don't enjoy pushing themselves, even if it's for a very short period of time. But these are the true magical activities that will promote longevity and peak performance and fat reduction and and looking good and getting the six pack vastly more so than just climbing the stairs at a slow pace a couple times a week. So I encourage people, just tiptoe into this world where you can get on that stationary bike, and instead of just pedaling along and watching a TV show for an hour, you can do a little bit of warm up and then hit some sprints. And I said bike because it's non-impact, so that means that anybody, even an unfit person, can dabble in sprinting and get good at doing something that's brief and explosive, and that sends these wonderful hormonal signals to the body that we want to get stronger, we want to get more explosive. In many cases, it'll send the signal to reduce excess body fat, because what you're doing is asking your body to perform in a really powerful manner, and the penalty for carrying excess body fat, like up a set of staircase, is extreme. And so your body will get the message that, hey, I need to be leaner, stronger, more powerful, more explosive, and that will delay the process of aging that we're all succumbing to because we're sitting around too much, because we never push our body to the maximum or near the maximum. And boy, if there's something that you can add in that takes very little time, of course the effort is high, but anybody can do something for 10 or 20 seconds and smile about it when they do it 5 times, take some rest in between, and then you're done with your workout. You go on with your day.
Yeah, that's great. So we got the low level activity for a total of 2 hours a week. That's amazing. That's very easy for everyone to do. And I think, it's funny, a lot of times if I'm like feeling a little tired and I don't feel like, lifting weights that day, I'll just say, okay, let's go to the gym, and I'm just going to walk fast for 20 minutes. And then by the end of that 20 minutes, I'm awake, I'm energized, and I'm almost always doing my workout after. But if not, I'll do a mobility or something, worst case scenario. But getting that low level is really good. Then obviously you want to do some weight training as well, and then you have this high intensity interval training, which I like that you recommended on the bike, because I will say at first, when I hadn't sprinted in many years and I first started doing this, and then all of a sudden I did it on one of those kind of like sprinting treadmills at the gym. In Vegas, it does get hot here in the summer, so we do have to do some stuff at the gym. But even for the, so even that, I was a little afraid of like, oh man, I better not fall here going all out if my legs give out on me, or, for someone who's not in great shape to go sprinting on a track, if they haven't ran in 20 years, they got to probably build up to that a little bit. But the bike, a bike or those ones, I don't even know it's called, with the little fan in the middle where you're moving your hands and pedaling at the same time. Those ones where you're steady allows you to really go all out and have that explosive motion without worrying about if you're going to fall over or something,
Oh, those are fantastic, incredibly challenging. And that's when you realize, 10 seconds of hard work on something like the assault bike or regular bike, you can do with a rowing machine, anything like that. It's just an incredible fitness stimulation. And guess what? It'll make you more comfortable and better performing at all lower levels of exercise intensity. So your jogging will become easier, or your 3-hour hike on the weekend, you'll feel stronger because of the fact that you are engaging in even sprints as short as 10 seconds. And so sprinting is, I can't say enough about it. I'm a huge fan, and it's within reach of everyone. And there's so many people I'd love to just go up to along the banks of exercise machines in the gyms and say, hey, go hard for 10 seconds and then rest for a minute, and do that a few times instead of just this steady pace, which in many cases is slightly too strenuous, and they're getting a stressful experience rather than an energizing, rejuvenating experience by doing cardio incorrectly.
Yeah. And so how many times a week? And also maybe you can clarify exactly, because I've heard a few different types of people give different versions on the HIIT training. The one I heard and the one I was doing on the assault bike, that I probably do about once a week, which I know I need to pick that up a little bit more now after this conversation. I'll pick it up. But yeah, so I'd like to ask you how many times per week. And then what I was doing was 20 seconds all out as hard as I could, then resting for 2 minutes. And I would do maybe 4 or 5 rounds of that. And I'd be, it would get me for sure.
Excellent. Yeah. That workout design is excellent that you describe. And what I will say is, unfortunately, there's a lot of programming that asks people to do something similar, like go all out for 20 seconds, and then only giving you 20 seconds rest or 40 seconds rest. And when you don't rest enough, when you try to be too badass with your HIIT workout, and I see this happening guilty in the group classes where the super peppy teacher is pumping out the music and saying, okay, one more, you guys can do it. And you're only going to get 10 seconds rest, and then we're going to push it again. And then, I tricked you. We're going to do one more after that. And people are smiling and they're having a good time and they're getting pumped and they're getting a fitness experience. But generally, when you design a workout that's too stressful and ask for maximum output over and over for slightly too long a duration with slightly insufficient rest between, what happens is you get a workout that's exhausting and depleting. And when you're talking about true sprinting and teaching the body to become more powerful and more explosive, you're talking about giving an all-out maximum effort, which requires a ton of rest in between each effort so that the workout can be of consistent quality for the duration. So what we really want, the goal for everyone listening, is I want your first sprint to be just as impressive and just as powerful and explosive as your sixth one or whatever your last one was. And yes, indeed, if you start to feel a decline in performance or an imperfection in technique that pops up on your fifth effort, all of a sudden now your lower back's feeling tight and you're really breathing extra hard after that one, that is a signal to end the workout. Rather than persevere because someone's yelling at you or because you think that you should do 10 every time. We really want to be more intuitive about this and realize what we're doing. And the goal is to teach the nervous system to become powerful and explosive. It's the same thing with lifting weights. You're doing a set and you're going to do 6 reps and then you're going to put the weight down. You're not going to try to do 18 until you collapse on the ground, because that's not going to be a sustainable training strategy. So with sprinting, we want to be really careful to limit our duration to usually between 10 and 20 seconds is plenty. You never need to exceed 20 seconds with a sprint, because if you do, it's not a sprint anymore. And it becomes, you can still have a competitive training session if you have specific goals. Like I want to run the 400 meters, which is 1 lap around the track. And ideally that's going to take me around 60 seconds. So I have to train for a 60-second event. So I'm doing different types of workouts that are preparing me for that. But for the vast majority of people, unless you have some specific sprinting goal, and I don't see a lot of people out there at the old person track meet. So for most of us, 20 seconds is the maximum, and then a sprint, a recovery interval that's 6 times as long. So that's exactly what you described. So someone was teaching you how to do a sprint workout correctly. And when you have that 6-to-1 recovery to work interval, that's when you can hit it hard again on the second, on the third, on the fourth, on the fifth. And about that is plenty. That's a fantastic workout. And if you were to continue on, you would screw up all those benefits because you'd be getting into the exhausting, depleting category. And guess what happens? You're not putting out as much output and your technique falters. And now we can see it on the machine. Like maybe the assault bike has the wattage output that you're seeing on the screen. So you want to have the same wattage output, the same energy output every time. And that's a sign that your workout is effective.
Nice. So for let's say the average person, in their 40s or 50s, and they're not as in great shape as you are, but they're just trying to be in good shape and stay slim. And again, it's recently someone just told me too, they were kind of overweight. They hadn't worked out really in a long time. They're like, I'm getting back into it. I just signed up for CrossFit. And something is better than nothing, but I'm also like, oof, you got to get yourself up to that first. Like you're going to go into this class and get beat up for an hour. And it's you got to really be careful about overdoing it. But going back to kind of your ideal, then we got the zone 2, the low level, we got the HIIT training, and then there's weight training. How many times a week for, again, this average person in their 40s, 50s, would you recommend the HIIT training and then weight training?
Well, I call it a sprint training. My friend, Dr. Craig Marker, calls it HIIT, HIIT training instead of HIIT training. And the important distinction there is when we talk about the common propensity to overdo it with HIIT training, and HIIT's such a great buzzword, and you can see all the articles. HIIT training is superior to just going slow, and you get all these fitness benefits, but high intensity interval training is what it stands for. And a lot of times we can design a workout that's inappropriate and becomes exhausting and depleting. So Dr. Marker's concept, where he calls it high intensity repeat training, is what I just described, where you want to repeat a similar performance every time you sprint. And that's the indication that the workout has been performed effectively. So whatever you want to call it, sprints, and that is once a week is plenty. Like your workout on the assault bike, and it's going to take
once a week. That's good to know. And because I hear, you're right. I'm glad you made that distinction, because there's people that tell me they have the Peloton and they're doing HIIT training on the Peloton, but it's like a 30-minute HIIT, or 1 hour HIIT. It's like, wait, is that really a HIIT though? If you're like on the bike for 30 minutes or an hour, it doesn't seem like. So I'm glad you made that distinction there. And also about doing it once a week. That's also good to know, because I think I also hear people saying, oh yeah, I do HIIT training 3-4 times a week or something like that. Right?
Yeah. It's like when people tell me I'm really big on CrossFit and I go 5 times a week. And I say, well, without even knowing you, I hereby declare that all 5 of those workouts are mediocre. They're like, what are you talking about? We hit it really hard. I'm like, if you're going to do something 5 times a week, by definition, each effort is not going to be a peak performance, because you're never recovered enough to truly deliver a peak performance effort. And that's something that many people will be better served to get away from, this idea that you have to go bust your butt every single day or several times a week, even for fitness. So if we take sprinting and do a properly conducted sprint session like you described once a week, resistance training, a lot of people recommend, hey, if you get in there and do a couple workouts a week that last between 10 and 30 minutes, that's plenty for baseline fitness. Dr. Doug McGuff's excellent book, Body by Science, the subtitle on the cover is 12 minutes a week to stronger, better muscles and so forth. And so their research, extensive scientific research, showing that a single workout of 5 full body exercises performed a single set to complete failure, which takes about 12 minutes, can continue to improve your strength over time indefinitely. And same with Dr. John Jaquish, OsteoStrong invention that he helps people for improving bone density. Senior citizens go to these centers and they perform 4 different full body exercises once a week is the protocol. And the reason it's once a week is because when they tried to test people to go more frequently, they lost their strength progression because of delayed recovery. And so that's a real awakening, especially for the gym rat that loves to go in there and socialize and be part of it and sweat and feel like you get a workout. But just like you described, if there's one of those days where you're not feeling fantastic, you can go in and do all kinds of productive things in the gym that are not super stressful or strenuous, like a mobility session or working with the TRX straps, or just mild general flexibility drills. That's what the top athletes are doing now. They're working with a lot of straps and mini bands to build up stabilizer muscles, where you're not crushing these major muscle groups and having this extreme workout that requires recovery, but you're contributing to your fitness in a different way. And then when the stars align, that's when you go hit it hard and have these wonderful, exciting experiences of pushing your body with a peak performance session.
Nice. Amazing. That's really, really great stuff. I feel like we've brought people up to speed on like the new way to get, health, longevity, strength, kind of everything all in one. There's so much stuff over the years, from chronic cardio to CrossFit to everything else. I'm glad we really summed that up there. I know we have to wrap up in a little bit, but I did want to get your kind of your advice on nutrition and eating and to support, that kind of activity. If you have, I know you have some great recommendations there, maybe the short version of it.
Oh, thank you. That's a really nice setup, because the short version is what we all deserve these days. And I've been in this game for so long I've written 21 books, I think it is now, on diet, health, fitness, peak performance. You mentioned our keto book that really was one of the first keto books published. It's still a bestseller, one of the best-selling books on the ketogenic diet. And that's nice to have that success, but I'm also really distressed to see this movement explode into a fad filled with hype and misinformation and misinterpretation. And so I'm taking a lot of pauses and rethinking and reevaluating a lot of the stuff I've been writing about for so long, because I think, frankly, it just misses or it flies over the head of the average person who's stressed, who's not living and breathing the research and listening to different experts like I do all day long. I listen to my podcast at double speed because I'm just filling my brain with everything I need to know, because I'm working on another book right now and have to stay on top of every little thing. Mm-hmm. And then I go and, for example, engage with my childhood buddies. We get together every few months and, sit around and have a nice evening and relax and catch up and visit. And I'll get hit with things like, here comes my friend JB, and he's holding a plate of nachos, and he walks over and he says, "Brad, healthy, yes or no?" And I'm like, wow. Is that, what do you have on there? What kind of cheese is that? Is it fake cheese, or where'd you get these things? But that little interaction was illuminating for me, because people just I don't want to hear the 5-minute or the 12-minute speech. I just want to know, am I doing myself right, or do I need to fix something? How do I manage through navigating all the messaging, especially the disputes among the different camps of people that are promoting, the caveman style, the carnivore diet, the keto diet. Then there's the vegan and the plant-based, and everyone's so passionate. So here's my short version of it. And again, this is a measured statement, inspired by the world's leading experts who have spent their lives researching and looking at all the factors and throwing out a lot of the trashy, manipulated science that we have been relying upon and the government has been spewing for many decades. So here's the thing, people. I'm going to change your life right now. If you can simply eliminate processed foods from your diet, you are so far down the path to success and peak performance and longevity and disease prevention that the rest of it is just going to be fun and games and optimizing and all the crazy stuff that you hear about people doing with their macronutrient calculators and their continuous glucose monitor patch on their arm and looking at the smartphone and running reports and listening to hours and hours of podcasts and reading all these books. But we have a huge, huge problem in modern life today, and that is this widespread presentation and promotion of nutrient deficient processed foods, in many cases highly toxic and contributing to this pandemic that we have of disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and all these things that are so common that they've become normal. And all we have to do is get that stuff out of the way, and then we can experience wonderful health awakenings. So, for example, if someone decides, hey, I'm going to try this keto thing, my neighbor told me about it, here's a book, here's what you do, they're going to have a tremendous health breakthroughs, because the keto diet suggests that you have to eliminate almost all forms of carbohydrate. And guess what? Most forms of carbohydrate that we're exposed to are highly processed, nutrient deficient, and they're not contributing to health in any way. Does that mean that all carbohydrates should be restricted forever from your diet? Of course not. And it can be really problematic when someone's afraid to even eat something like fruit because it's going against their count. And so to be more sensible and to not take any sides or not put people into a stressful, high logistics plan of planning these special meals and how many times a day should you eat, how many hours, what's your fasting period, all these kind of things. Just forget about that and try to surround yourself with wholesome, natural, nutritious foods. And of course, make the best choices when it comes to the various food categories. Because when we talk about red meat, for example, as a big buzzword, yeah, I just read another article that says red meat causes cancer. Well, guess what's red meat? That's the pepperoni pepperoni on your pizza that you threw down with giant piles of dough that were made for that pizza. That's sausage, that's processed bacon, and it also is wonderful grass-fed buffalo from the Great Plains, which is one of the most nutritious foods on the planet. But if you say red meat and you're comparing these trashy foods with some of the top foods that you can get, we're not having a reasonable conversation here. So number one, ditch those processed foods. To make it easy, I'll put them in three big categories. We call them the big three toxic modern foods. And these are the refined industrial seed oils, refined sugars, and refined grains. And so if you look at packages and boxes and labels and frozen foods and fast foods, they're by and large containing usually all three of those ingredients, but especially the industrial seed oils is the number one enemy that we have to really carefully scrutinize and strictly eliminate from our diet. And generally, you're going to find those in the bottled cooking oils. So you want to get rid of those and use saturated fats to cook with instead. And then secondly, you're going to find them in all manner of restaurant foods, processed foods, fast foods. And that's a big battle when you're dining out because most restaurants use these vegetable oils to cook the entrees in. But in your house, you can certainly make good choices and navigate to products that do not contain canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower, safflower, those kinds of oils.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the reasons it's been very difficult for me to eat out recently because almost every restaurant, cooks with these types of oils. So you have to be really careful. But yeah, I agree with you too on the red meat. I don't believe I've ever seen a study that showed people who ate grass-fed, grass-finished red meat with a non-processed food diet, right? And I don't think there's any study done on those people showing that those people got cancer or anything like that, right? It's like, when you look at a fast food meal, you got your bun, you got your burger that's probably cooked in canola oil or something, whatever they're using on the pan there. French fries, right, which is again the seed oils and processed food, and then your soda. I mean, it's like the meat might be. I mean, that meat's probably really low quality, but the meat might be the best part of that whole thing, compared to the processed bread, French fries, seed oils and sugar soda. So yeah, good points there.
And what happens when you have a diet that's not scrutinized and allow these hyper palatable, nutrient deficient processed foods in, they have addictive properties. Dr. Robert Lustig, former guest on my B.rad podcast, has a book called Metabolical. Dr. William Davis has a book called Wheat Belly, which these were, top bestsellers. And they talk about the addictive properties of these processed foods to the extent that you literally do become addicted to sugar. They hit the opioid receptors in your brain. They trigger the dopamine response. And so you have a tendency to want more and more Twinkies, Ben and Jerry's, potato chips, Slurpees, all these things, because your metabolism is not working well. You're not good at burning cellular energy internally. And so you become reliant upon these hits of these doses of quick energy because you're not metabolically healthy. And when you can ditch these foods and clean up your diet, and again, go toward the most nutrient dense, delicious, high satiety foods on the planet, you're going to be living large. I mean, it's not a sacrifice to go to the omelet bar at one of the casinos and order up a custom-made omelet and have that every single day, and have a nice, delicious steak dinner with whatever the accoutrements are that are natural. Some people are, thinking vegetables should be a centerpiece, and there's a lot of thinking now that's going against that and wondering if they can cause problems. But again, that's getting into nuance. So I want people to go to a wholesome natural foods diet, enjoy the heck out of it, choose the foods that most appeal to you and the meals and the meal times, and make them a special celebratory experience. But do not, do not take this lightly. You have to rid your home and your purchasing decisions from this junk food.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. This has been amazing. We covered a lot of stuff, from the optimal new best way to work out for longevity, strength, everything from zone 2 to not HIIT, but HIIT, HIIT training or sprint training, as well as the weight training, as well as the nutrition and way to eat for longevity as well. So this has been really great, Brad. For people who want to continue to learn more from you, I know I will be. What's the best way for people to do that?
Oh, thank you. You can listen to the B.rad podcast wherever you enjoy listening, and have a lot of great guests. And I do a lot of shows where I just record my own insights and quick tips. So there's a lot of practical things coming down the pipe in an organized manner to help you make immediate change. And bradkearns.com, my website. We talked about that morning routine. I actually have an online course, which has been really well received. I just launched it where I thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to film and explain everything I do. And you can pick and choose from a variety of different suggested routines that fit with your level of commitment and level of fitness. So I have a quick yoga sequence. I have a morning awakening, set the spine and the musculature, and it only takes a few minutes. And if that's the thing you start with, that's great. So I'll teach you how to kick off this wonderful life-changing habit of a morning routine. And that's just one of the online courses I have there. So there should be a lot of fun things to engage with. You can watch my crazy videos of high jumping and playing speed golf. And it's just a pleasure to be on with your lively audience, and great questions, great conversation. I appreciate it so much, Talor.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been our pleasure. So Brad Kearns, Kearns is spelled KEARNS.com, and the B.rad podcast. Is there when I'm typing that into like iTunes, would it be B.rad?
Either way, you'll find it. That's what's so great about, you spell somebody's name wrong, you still find them. I love it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with everyone today. And look forward to learning more from you here in the future. Thanks for listening. And just a reminder, if you haven't yet tried any of our Peak Performance products, you get 20% off your first order. We have one of the largest selection of USDA certified organic superfood powders, as well as very high quality supplements. And you get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com. That's www.buypeakperformance.com.